Welcome back, everyone, to the deep dive. You know how we do things around here. We pick a topic and we go deep. And today, uh, we're diving into paternity in Texas.
Oh, yeah.
We'll be taking a look at excerpts from a legal guide and really focusing on, the kind of stuff you can actually use.
Practical stuff.
Practical stuff, actionable information. That's the name of the game here.
Exactly.
Now, get this. Did you know that establishing paternity in Texas could actually be like the crucial thing for a child to be able to inherit from their father?
It's a big deal. Yeah.
Yeah, I was surprised by that when I read that.
It is.
We're gonna be breaking down exactly why paternity is so important, legally speaking, here in Texas. The different ways that paternity can be established.
Right.
And then all the rights and responsibilities that come along with it.
Right.
It's gonna be a lot.
Yeah, it's a good one.
So
Big topic.
yeah, it's a big topic.
It's really interesting, though.
It really is, and it's something that, I think a lot of people just kind of gloss over and don't think too much about.
Yeah.
Sure. But it's so important.
It's fundamental.
Right, it's fundamental.
When we talk about families and
Yeah.
parent-child relationship.
When you're talking about, the law coming in and, recognizing somebody as a father,
Absolutely.
it's more than just, a biological thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly it. I
Yeah.
mean, establishing paternity in Texas, you're right. It's more than just knowing, biologically who the father is. We're talking about this, this legal connection that impacts a whole bunch of things, especially when it comes to, the child's well-being, in their future.
Yeah, so it's not just a box to check on a birth certificate.
Not at all.
Okay.
No, it's a big deal because, Texas law links paternity to a bunch of benefits for the child.
Okay.
So, for example, imagine a child needs, some kind of really expensive medical treatment.
Right.
If paternity has been established, that means that child has access to their father's health insurance,
Yeah, that's huge.
potentially saving the family, thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
And we're talking about other things, too, like inheritance rights,
Right.
the
Nice
potential
stuff.
for child support.
Mm.
All of this is tied into whether or not paternity has been legally established.
So, okay, that makes sense. Texas law really wants to make sure that the child is taken care of financially.
Right. It's all
Yeah.
about, child's best interests.
Right.
And
But I'm sure some people are out there listening and saying, okay, but how exactly
right.
does paternity get established in Texas? I
Yeah.
know I was wondering that when I was reading through all this stuff.
Well, there are three main ways. The first is called a voluntary acknowledgment of paternity,
Okay.
or AOP. Essentially, it's a legal document
Mm-hmm.
where both parents agree on who the father is, and they sign it.
Okay.
Often, it's the simplest and quickest way to make things official.
Right.
But there are situations where getting a DNA test, even with an AOP, is really important.
I was struck by that when I was reading this. I was like, wait, even with an AOP,
Yeah.
they might recommend getting a DNA test.
Exactly.
What kind of situations are those where they think that that's crucial?
Okay, so think of a situation where, a man signs an AOP because he believes he's the father,
Right.
but later discovers that he was misled about, the child's conception.
Oh.
That could lead to a lot of complications down the line.
Yeah.
So having that irrefutable biological evidence
Right.
from the start can really prevent legal headaches down the line.
That's a really good point.
You know what I mean?
It's better to be safe than sorry.
Yeah, it's all about, protecting everybody involved
Totally.
and making sure that the information is accurate.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But what happens if there's some uncertainty about who the father is?
Right.
Or if one parent just isn't cooperating?
That's when the second method comes in.
Okay.
And that's establishing paternity through a court order.
Okay.
So this might happen if there's a dispute about paternity.
Yeah.
Or if one parent, just refuses to sign the AOP.
Gotcha.
In those cases. Either parent
Mm.
or even the child themselves can file a lawsuit to establish paternity.
I didn't realize that the child could initiate that.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
It's really interesting, and I think it shows how seriously Texas takes this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So once that lawsuit is filed, things, I imagine, get a little bit more complex.
Well, yeah, I mean, lawyers usually get involved
Right.
to represent each parent's interests.
Right.
And that's often when you see, those paternity tests that we see on TV come into play.
Yeah.
So genetic testing, usually a DNA test, becomes a key part of the process.
Right.
The court can actually order a DNA test to determine definitively if the alleged father is the biological father.
And I'm assuming those DNA tests are pretty reliable.
Oh, incredibly reliable.
Okay.
We're talking 99% accuracy rate or higher.
Wow.
So once those DNA results are in, the court can then issue a ruling on paternity.
Gotcha.
And that ruling then paves the way for like other legal proceedings like,
Yeah.
figuring out child support or
Right.
custody arrangements.
So you've got like the AOP, which is more like a mutual agreement thing.
Right, exactly.
And then you've got the court order, which is when things get a little messy.
Yeah, you could say that.
It sounds like the AOP is the easiest route if everybody's on the same page.
Definitely the most straightforward.
But our guide does mention some potential pitfalls, even with an AOP.
Oh, sure.
It specifically warns about, how important accurate documentation is.
Absolutely.
And avoiding legal loopholes.
Mm-hmm.
Can you give us an example of like what kind of loopholes we should be looking out for?
Absolutely. So let's say there's a mistake on the AOP form.
Okay.
Even something small, like a misspelled name or like an incorrect date.
Oh, wow.
Those seemingly tiny errors could have like a huge impact later on.
Yeah.
It could delay the entire process
Yeah.
or even lead to legal challenges down the road.
So it's all about the details.
The details matter a lot.
Yeah. And I think this is a really good place to remind our listeners that this deep dive is for informational purposes only. This is not a substitute for actual legal advice.
It is not.
If you are dealing with any of this in your own lives,
Yes.
please talk to a lawyer.
1,000%.
Yeah,
Family law is complicated.
it is.
Paternity cases come with high stakes,
Right.
especially for the child.
Of course.
An experienced attorney can make all the difference in navigating like the intricacies of the legal system and protecting your rights.
Yeah, so we know the importance of establishing paternity in Texas, how it can be done, but let's talk about the actual rights and responsibilities that come with it.
Sure.
I know when a lot of people think about this, they think about child support. But what about the father's rights
Yeah.
once paternity is established?
Right. That's a great point. It's not just about the obligations.
Right.
You're right. Child support often the first thing that comes to mind. And the guide is very clear on this.
Mhm.
In Texas, child support is like a legally enforceable obligation
Okay.
for the father
Yeah.
once paternity is established.
So how is that amount determined?
Typically, it comes down to the father's income and the needs of the child.
Okay.
The courts really aim to ensure that the child is financially supported, regardless of whether the parents live together or not.
That's good.
You know?
But it's not just about the father's financial obligations, right?
Right.
What about visitation rights?
Absolutely. Visitation rights are crucial. The guide really highlights how important they are for the child's development.
Mm.
Giving the father, a chance to bond with his child and play an active role in their life.
Right.
And those rights can be determined in a couple of ways. Sometimes parents are able to reach like an agreement on their own, maybe through mediation or just by talking it out.
Right.
But if they can't agree, the court steps in and issues an order outlining the specifics of the visitation schedule.
Gotcha.
And the court always prioritizes the best interests of the child when making these decisions.
So it's all about finding that balance.
Absolutely, finding that.
This brings up a great point, though, because, life happens. Life changes, and people's circumstances change.
It does.
What happens if a parent's job changes, their income changes?
Right. They move. Oh, those what ifs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can child support and visitation orders be modified?
That's a great question. And you're right. Life throws curveballs sometimes. Luckily, child support and visitation orders aren't set in stone. If there's like a significant change in circumstances, either parent can actually petition the court to modify those orders.
Oh, okay. So there's some flexibility.
There is.
Yeah.
There is some flexibility built in because we know that things change.
They do.
Yeah.
Let's shift gears a little bit and
Yeah.
talk about what happens when things get a little bit more complicated with proving paternity.
Okay.
I'm particularly interested in what the guide calls a lack of parental cooperation.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, lack of parental cooperation can be a major hurdle in some paternity cases.
Uh-huh.
It often involves situations where the mother might be reluctant to acknowledge the father
Right.
for various reasons.
Right.
And this is where things can get, emotionally charged.
Yeah.
And it really highlights the importance of communication
Yeah.
and empathy
Right.
from both sides.
Because ultimately it's the child who ends up missing out if the parents can't find a way to work together,
Exactly.
even if it's just, for legal reasons.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
And the guide emphasizes that if you're trying to establish paternity and you're facing resistance, patience is key.
Patience is key.
Because building trust and finding common ground takes time.
Absolutely.
And sometimes having a lawyer involved can be helpful,
Very much
as like a neutral third party
as that neutral third party.
to guide everybody through the process.
Yeah, for sure.
So lack of cooperation is one challenge. What else does the guide mention as a potential problem when you're proving paternity?
Well, documentation, my friend.
Oh.
Documentation.
Oh, always.
You wouldn't believe how many cases get tripped up by like simple documentation errors.
Oh, again, it's all about the details.
It really is.
Yeah.
The guide is very clear on this. Having all your ducks in a row paperwork-wise is crucial.
Okay.
And it's not just about having like the right forms. It's also about making sure they're filled out correctly,
Right.
signed properly, and filed on time.
Wow.
Even a small mistake can snowball into a much larger issue later on.
It sounds like having a good filing system is key.
Yeah.
And like attention to detail.
Attention to detail is key.
Okay.
And if you're feeling overwhelmed, don't be afraid to reach out for help.
What other kinds of documents are we talking about here? Is it just the AOP?
It's more than just the AOP.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about any documentation related to the child's birth, any previous agreements between the parents, and even medical records,
Oh.
especially if genetic testing is involved. Everything needs to be like meticulously organized and accurate.
So organization is key.
Organization is key.
If you're feeling lost in the paperwork
Right.
or unsure if you're doing things correctly,
Yeah,
the guide says reach out to a lawyer,
definitely.
contact the Texas Attorney General's office, or even visit the Texas Vital Statistics website.
All great resources.
They have resources to help make sure you're on the right track.
They do.
This is really helpful information. But the guide also briefly mentions legal loopholes that can arise when proving paternity.
Oh, yeah.
I'd love to dive into that a little bit more and understand what types of scenarios could create these loopholes.
This is where things get interesting.
Yeah.
Let's unpack that and some other more complex situations in part 2 of our deep dive.
Yes, that's good.
All right.
You were saying that the legal guide mentions legal loopholes.
Yeah.
That sounds a little intimidating.
It does sound intimidating.
Can you give us a better understanding of like what those are and what kind of scenarios we should be aware of?
You're right. Legal loopholes, it can sound a little daunting.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like we're, trying to find a way to get out of responsibilities or anything like that.
Right.
These loopholes are usually unintentional. Gaps in the process.
Okay.
And they often pop up in like more complex situations.
So walk us through one of those situations. What's like a real life example? Or a legal loophole might become an issue.
Okay, imagine this. A child is born, and the mother was previously in a relationship with another man. Her current partner believes he's the father, but there's some uncertainty,
Right.
maybe because of the timing of the previous relationship or just, lingering doubts.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that sounds messy.
It can be. And this is a classic scenario where those legal loopholes we mentioned can come into play.
Okay.
Even if the current partner wants to establish paternity, there might be legal hurdles to overcome, especially if the previous partner also steps forward, claiming paternity.
So it becomes like a he said, she said situation.
It can. And that's why having those DNA tests can be so valuable.
Right.
A DNA test can provide that irrefutable biological evidence and cut through any of that lingering uncertainty.
Right. So in those trickier situations, a DNA test isn't just about peace of mind. It's a crucial piece of legal evidence.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. And let's be honest, these situations can get emotionally charged very quickly.
Of course.
This is where having a lawyer involved is even more important.
Right.
They can help navigate those legal complexities, gather all the necessary evidence, and ensure that everyone's rights are protected.
It's like having a legal detective on your side, helping to piece together the facts and figure out the best way forward.
Exactly.
I like that.
And remember, the guide isn't suggesting that these situations are impossible to resolve.
Right.
It's just emphasizing that they need careful attention and often require the expertise of a family law attorney.
So being prepared and knowing that there might be a longer road ahead is key.
Absolutely.
And I think the main message here is that early preparation and seeking legal guidance when needed are crucial for protecting yourself and, most importantly, the child.
100%.
Yeah.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
This has been super informative, but I have to admit, thinking about all these legal details, it's a little overwhelming.
Sure.
I think it's easy to get caught up in the procedures and the paperwork and kind of lose sight of the bigger picture.
I understand what you mean. It's important to step back and remember what this is all really about. The child establishing paternity in Texas.
Yeah.
It isn't just about legal technicalities.
Yeah.
It's about setting a child up for success and well-being.
Exactly. And that makes me wonder, how do you think Texas law balances the rights of both parents while also prioritizing what's best for the child?
That's a great question, and the perfect transition to the broader implications of paternity in Texas.
Okay.
Let's explore that in part 3.
We've covered a lot of ground on the specifics of paternity in Texas, the how-tos, the what-ifs, the potential pitfalls. But I'm curious about the bigger picture now. How does Texas law balance the rights of both parents while also prioritizing what's best for the child?
That's the heart of the matter, isn't it?
Yeah.
And honestly, it's a complex issue with no easy answers. What I find fascinating is that Texas law, like many other states, tries to find a middle ground. It wants to protect the individual rights of both parents, while also recognizing that a child needs both parents to thrive.
It sounds like a delicate balancing act.
It really is.
Yeah.
And when we connect this to the bigger picture, what we're really witnessing is the evolution of family structures. The law is constantly trying to catch up to the reality of modern families.
Because families today look very different than they did 50 years ago. We've got blended families, same-sex couples, raising children, single-parent households. It's a beautiful tapestry of different family structures.
Absolutely. And the law is trying to adapt and provide a framework that supports all these different families. In the context of paternity, Texas law really zeroes in on child support and visitation rights by ensuring that the father is legally obligated to provide financial support, and by guaranteeing his right to have a relationship with the child. The law is acknowledging that both parents play a vital role in the child's life.
So even if the parents aren't together, Texas law recognizes that the child benefits from having both parents involved.
Exactly. And this goes beyond just emotional benefits. Studies have shown that children with involved fathers tend to do better in school. They're more socially adept, and they're less likely to get involved in risky behaviors.
Wow.
They often have better overall life outcomes.
That's amazing how impactful that father-child connection can be. So it's not just about a name on a birth certificate. Establishing paternity can lay the foundation for a child's future success and well-being.
You got it. And that's why I think Texas law is on the right track. It recognizes that establishing paternity is about more than just legal procedures. It's about giving a child the best possible start in life, with access to resources and a meaningful connection with both parents.
It seems like putting the child's needs first is something everyone can agree on, no matter their personal circumstances.
I wholeheartedly agree. And it's a conversation that needs to continue, because families will continue to evolve, and so will the laws surrounding paternity.
Well said. So as we wrap up this deep dive into paternity in Texas, what's the one key takeaway you hope our listeners will remember?
Paternity is about more than just biology. It's about responsibility. It's about rights. And most importantly, it's about laying the groundwork for a child to have the best possible start in life.
That's a powerful statement. And for those of you listening who might be navigating a paternity issue, remember, we've only scratched the surface here. Do your research, reach out for legal guidance, and learn more about your specific situation. Knowledge is power, especially when it comes to something as important as this.
I couldn't agree more.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into paternity in Texas. We'll be back next time with another fascinating topic that matters.